You asked for it. Here it is. It's a podcast from Apathetic Enthusiasm.
Coming to you live from a world where I didn't have to look up words in a dictionary because I already knew what they meant. Words that are now inexorably embedded in the lexicon of my mind. Join us for some sapphic side conversation today on Interdimensional RSS, the unofficial Rick and Morty podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to yet another installment of Interdimensional RSS. I'm Travis.
I am Brandon, and welcome to our show. Yes, another wonderful week of Rick and Morty, new episodes of Rick and Morty, and we are so excited to talk to you about it today. And, you can always join us to talk about it over on our social media accounts. We have Twitter, at Rick and Morty Pod. You can go there. That's the one that we talk on the most. Woo! Facebook.com/Rick and Morty Podcast. That's the one we talk on the least. Instagram, Rick and Morty Podcast. Email, Rick and Morty Podcast at thegmail.com. It is just at Gmail. It's not at thegmail.com. That is a different website email address. On the web, you can go to our subreddit, rickandmorty.reddit.com, or the essentially official Rick and Morty subreddit, rickandmorty.reddit.com. I think I messed it up. It doesn't matter.
You did.
Website,
You did. It's fine. We're having
whatever.
fun.
I never do this. Website, rickandmortypod.com. You can also get there at rickandmortypodcast.com. Coincidentally, we're streaming live tonight here on twitch.tv/apathetic enthusiasm, where you can come join the chat live and say, hey, talk about this, and we may or may not actually respond to you, but we will try. By goodness gracious, we will try. And then if you want, also youtube.com/apathetic enthusiasm. If you aren't live, but you want to see the video, you want us to see us live, I'm wearing my Miami Dolphins shirt. It looks like it's very old, but it's just very big on me. So anyway, support the show over at TeePublic, apatheticenthusiasm.com/shop, or our Patreon. I don't know if that TeePublic works. Doesn't matter. Patreon.com/apathetic enthusiasm. That is it for our social media stuff. Hey, if you want to be a part of the conversation, be sure to check out one of those sites. Okay, all right.
Maybe I'll just sit back and let you do the whole show. I'll just be here.
No. I want to talk to you now, Travis. I'm going to flip the script. I'm going to turn it around on you, and I'm going to say, hey, Travis, how are you doing today?
Oh, my goodness, Brandon, I'm doing so good. I'm doing so great. And I'll tell you why. Because this week I took a little trip out to the coast. Had a few laughs. I went and visited a good friend of mine for a couple of days. Got to hang out in beautiful Los Angeles.
I hear it's great this time of year.
Oh my gosh, the weather is perfect. The booze is tasty. I don't know. I came and hung out with you, Brandon. I hung out with you for a few days, so that was a lot of fun. Got a little bit of time away. Some disc golf.
Yeah,
you totally destroyed me at disc golf. Played so well. But yeah, it's a good time. Got some In-N-Out burger, some Don Cucos,
Mexican food. Yeah, lots
so
of it.
good.
Lots of it.
So
it was so good. It was so good having you out here for the few days. We got to record that one episode of the podcast, which you felt very weird about. And apologies to anybody who's actually listening for the quality. It was very, very rushed. It was a very rushed job, and we're like, I just want to get something out. I don't
make
care.
It. Let's it. And honestly, it's almost an example for the entire trip, because I was only there a couple of days. We had a bunch of stuff going on. Like, we got to spend a lot of good quality time together, but it just feels like, they're always too short, but it just gives us something to look forward to in the future. Another hangout, in 2 years or whatever it ends up being.
Yeah.
But now we're here. We're hanging out again in the format in which we're most comfortable, and that's alone in our respective recording areas over a video call, talking about a little show called Rick and Morty.
Yeah, and I can't wait to talk. Can I wait? I can't wait I need to talk about Rick and Morty stuff, Travis.
Okay.
And because, our fans demand it. They demand some Rick and Morty talk.
The fans wait for no banter. And with that in mind, I think it's best that we get into our first segment, which is semi-pertinent news.
Off we go into the semi-pertinent news again. It's time again. Here we come, zooming to semi-pertinent news. That's right, it is semi-pertinent news time this week. Also, that was sung to the tune of the Air Force song, which I just retired from.
Oh, congratulations, Brandon.
So, all right, here we go. First up, this is something that you pointed out to me. I didn't know that this was a bit of news, but it is great news. It is absolutely semi-pertinent. Old Jeff Loveness, Rick and Morty alumni, who went on to Ant-Man. He's done stuff for Marvel. He is writing Avengers Kang Dynasty. That's right. All these Rick and Morty people sticking with that multiverse stuff.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I mean, obviously, we haven't seen Quantumania yet, but because it's not out. But the fact that Jeff Loveness was already, tapped to write that one, and then with Jessica Gao being the showrunner on She-Hulk, it's just really it's interesting to me how many Rick and Morty alumni have made this crossover into the MCU and are really helping to shape these future phases of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I mean some fans may be worried about that and may be concerned that Marvel's moving in a weird direction or they're not staying true to who they are or whatever. Thor: Love and Thunder has too many jokes in it. But to me, like, you go back to Avengers Infinity War, Avengers Endgame, like, those were Russo brothers movies, right? Like, and those guys cut their teeth. I say cut their teeth, but they did so much directing alongside Dan Harmon on the show Community.
Yeah.
And it's just so funny to see all these people who have worked with Harmon, have worked alongside Harmon, to then go and have huge influential roles in the Marvel universe. It's just really cool to see, and I'm excited to see what Jeff Loveness does in the MCU.
Wholeheartedly, and we got Mike Waldron too, who's still doing like he did Loki. So anyway, good job on him. So looking forward to seeing that. Love me some Ant-Man. Kang is in the Quantumania, so
that's right.
It makes sense that it's just like kind of an extension of the Kang bit. So, all right, on with that. Our next little bit of semi-pertinent news, is the Reddit post of the week. And this Reddit post of the week, I went ahead and I gave it to fellow Rick and Morty subreddit moderator X647, who has created the I'm Mr. Frundles, the new community emoji. Cute Mr. Frundles.
So
the post received 6.8 thousand upvotes, received 6 awards, including the Yes, and Silver Award. It received no reports. It has a massive upvote rating, and it's just very great. So shout out to the moderator X647 putting out that emoji, giving it to the Rick and Morty subreddit community, which you can join too over at rickandmorty.subreddit.pieceofreddit.org.
That piece of Reddit.
You know how to get to Reddit. You know how to get to the subreddit. I don't need to explain
You know
it
how
to
to Reddit.
Okay, all right. And if you didn't see the image, it was Mr. Frundles. Cool, great.
Mr. Frundles.
That was a Reddit post of the week. Be sure to go to Reddit. That's fun. But also go to something we call Instagram, where you can find the latest bit of Dan Harmon's social media minute.
Dan Harmon social media minute. I don't change my song because I'm not original. All right. Dan Harmon social media minute. Here we go. Only a couple of posts to choose from this week. Perhaps Dan has been very busy. But I wanted to go this week with Dan the Man, who is getting his plank game on. This is a video that Dan Harmon posted. The original caption is just "Good morning 49," and it's a video of him doing a plank. His dog walks up with a chew toy and rubs it in his face, and the dog starts licking his face while he's doing a plank. And then he starts getting some tips about how to do better planks. I'm not playing the audio for you, but he does also go on to clarify that it was not his birthday. He's been 49 for quite a while, so that was misleading. Also, he doesn't know how to curve your buttocks towards each other, which is one of the tips that he got. But anyway, if you want to see Dan looking svelte, looking in shape, and doing some planks, then make sure to follow at Dan Harmon over on Instagram. That's where you can find all of his social media offerings. And that's your social media minute.
Heck yeah, Travis, good job.
Sure.
Good
You're
job.
welcome.
Yeah.
Thanks.
No, I'm glad that he's doing planks. I feel like I gained about 15 pounds this last week, so I need to start doing some planks, man.
Oh, how long do you think the longest plank is that you could do?
You know, it's not my abs that get tired. It's my arms.
Okay.
Arms are what.
So we're talking full like push-up position plank. You're like full arms
even
extended.
if I'm just like on my elbows.
Okay. All right.
I just feel tired.
Yeah.
I just want, when I'm in that position, I want to sleep. You know.
When you're in the plank position. Okay.
Yeah. I get bored.
All right. Well, we'll go ahead and say it's 30 seconds then. That's the longest plank you can do.
Okay. All right. You just over
35.
Okay.
Whatever yours is plus 5 seconds. That's
you are stronger than me. Yeah, that makes sense.
All right. Well, that is it for semi-pertinent news. Short and sweet this week. But if you find a semi-pertinent news story that you feel is worth mentioning, hit us up at Rick and Morty Pod over on Twitter, or send us an email, and we will include it in a future episode. Thanks to everybody that sends us stuff all the time. All right. We had quite an episode this week, and it is time for us to discuss it in a little segment we like to call The Main Thing.
Main thing. Yes, it's the main thing, everybody. I took your criticism to heart, and I will do now just half-assed recordings as often as I can.
Awesome. That was
as often
really
as I
good.
can.
Yeah.
Yes, it's the main thing, which means it's time to talk about the episode. This week we're talking about Season 6, Episode 3, Bethic, Twinstinct. Original air date 18 September 2022, written by Ann Lane, who has written other episodes before, directed by Douglas Einar Olson. I don't know if he's done any directing before. I can't recall, but I have followed him on Twitter for years and years, so he's been on the show for a while. Guest stars Nolan North, classic, as the character Reggie, which I think is Jerry's best friend back in the day, and then Tress McNeil, of course. Our brunopsis. It's not ours, but we'll take it. Gotta love yourself, or no one else will, bruh. Ever will, bruh. Our synopsis, aka Adult Swim's official synopsis, because we just got lazy. The Smiths celebrate one of their favorite holidays while Summer and Morty lock into their new ultra-realistic video game console.
I didn't realize you're stealing our synopses now. You're just plagiarizing them.
This was the first week I think I officially just stole the synopsis, because I put it in for the Reddit post, and I'm like, that's good enough.
That's close. That's good. That's good. Everybody, shame Brandon on Twitter at Barnyard Cruise for being unoriginal. Yeah, go shame him right now. All right. Well, here we go. This episode, we have entered the period of time where I no longer have access to screeners of episodes in advance, and I have to cash in on the fact that I subscribe to the show over on iTunes, which means I don't get the episode until like 2 a.m. my time. So I did not watch this episode live, but you did,
Yeah,
and
sure.
you were sending me a few messages, and I will share with the listeners now, verbatim,
Yeah.
what you said to me. If the words are, "Here we go," all caps, incest. And then about 15 minutes later, this episode, yipes.
Say that.
So yes, if you've seen the episode, maybe you felt the same way. Uh, the we skipped the title reference, but obviously, Bethic Twinstinct is a reference to the Paul Verhoeven classic
Classic.
Basic Instinct. Yeah, which is it's an adult. I mean, it's not an adult film, but it is a grown up film that deals with some adult themes.
Yeah. Some adult themes. Although Basic Instinct is more about like crime and murder versus clones doing
Loving
it.
yourself. There are some serious themes in here that we're gonna discuss momentarily, but I wanted to go back, and this is the thing that I forgot to do today. I wanted to go back to our episode where we saw the episode titles and we were making predictions. And I feel like when we got to the Bethic Twinstinct episode, we speculated, maybe not on the nose, but kind of with this idea of some sort of relationship between the Beths, or with Space Beth and Jerry, or something like that. I think we maybe, I don't know, maybe I had a fever dream.
I mean, I was
mentioned
completely wrong. Yeah, because I was hoping for some kind of like unknown twin sister thing to be happening.
That's right. You were
That was
completely
that was my shitty prediction.
But yeah, in this episode, we end up in seeing Earth Beth and Space Beth take their relationship to the next level, so to speak. In the inside the episode, they talk about the theme of exploring yourself in this, and that plays out through a romantic relationship between Space Beth and Earth Beth. We know what the Facebook messages say, Brandon, but how did you feel watching this for the first time?
How did I feel about watching it for the first time? So I watched the show with my wife and my kid. And
Is there another one hiding that I didn't know about the whole time I was there to visit?
Yeah, no, well, my dog. I consider my Chihuahua a kid, and she was like, "Ooh," and she put her head under her pillow the entire time.
Licked something feverishly.
As soon as I saw the pronopsis of the episode, I basically put it like in the live discussion thread. I put in the first comment there. I said, just so we're all on the same page, based off the pronopsis, we're expecting them to hook up, right? We're expecting Beth to cheat on Jerry with Beth, right? And so knew it was coming, expected it in some way, shape, or form. And so more when I said like yipes, it was like, oh, like okay, they're going full into it.
Yeah.
And honestly, it hadn't gone through the entire episode yet, and there was a part of me, the yipes bit was that I was afraid that I was going to go in a direction that was more akin to Never Rick and Morty, or not Never Rick and Morty, the Slut Dragon episode, or the Sperm episode, right? I thought that's where the kind of feel of the episode would go. So I was worried it was going to be juvenile or kind of immature. And I'll be honest, and I mentioned this in the Facebook chat with you as well. I'm more prude than I would like to be when it comes to this kind of conversation. I'm going to open up here now, but like I think that initial kind of same thing with Slut Dragon episode, that shame that like that I don't feel good about that necessarily.
Yeah.
I think that crept into how I viewed it. but it took it in a mature way, and so I don't know, like, so you saw my reactions, and then you're like, oh, I have to wake up in the morning and watch this from my car. That's exciting. What did you feel
To be
about
fair, I got up early enough where I could sit here in my
Oh.
recording chair and just sit here like putting my shoes on to go to work and watch the episode. But I think because of your initial reaction, I was expecting worse, and therefore was less like shocked maybe by what we were presented, right? And I talked a little bit about it with you today, but I feel like maybe there's like a mental block for me where when you type in all caps incest, right? I am not sure that this like qualifies as that, right? Because I mean, honestly, we're talking about sci-fi here. We're talking about clones, and not like realistic scientific cloning where you like grow another organism from the DNA of someone. Like, we're talking about sci-fi cloning, like, hey, let me make an exact replica of you that is the same age and has the same memories, and then throw that out there and see what happens, right? And so I think the lack of realism or whatever in that scenario, to me, creates some sort of barrier where I'm like, all right, well, this is untapped like territory. I'm sure it's been tapped in plenty of sci-fi out there, but within the show and within my experience, I was like, all right, this is more of like some sort of different kind of relationship than just the sexual hangups in the pleasure chamber or something that we'd get from an early episode in season 1.
There's a side thing I want to bring up from a different show. This year, the same season. I'm going to say something about What We Do in the Shadows, and you don't watch What We Do in the Shadows.
I'm certainly not caught up. I think I watched the first season and a half or so. Yeah.
Okay. So minor spoilers for anybody who loves that show, and if you do love that show, you should already be spoiled. So I'm not spoiling anything. But Guillermo, he comes out as gay. He has a boyfriend, and Nandor, his master, is looking for love, and he earlier in the season he had a genie, a djinn who was granting him all these wishes, and so his wish was to turn his wife into Guillermo's boyfriend because Guillermo's boyfriend he loved Guillermo's boyfriend, and so similar concept. These two guys now. Guillermo got pissed off at Nandor. They all these clones went away. Nandor was still with the guy. The other guy went back to the UK. So Guillermo went to surprise his boyfriend in the UK, and then he saw that the cloned guy was kissing himself. And Guillermo was very sad. For some reason, I wasn't as hung up about or as prude about that situation as I was about all this Beth stuff, and I'm not really sure why. But I guess I bring it up because it's similar. Like the concept is similar.
Yeah.
Maybe it didn't focus so much on a main character. Maybe that's the difference, right?
Yeah. I think it's interesting if you watch that inside the episode. Dan Harmon talks about when the idea is first pitched, right? And I think it's originally pitched by the writer Anne Lane for the episode. Dan thinks about it in sort of that just like strictly physical sort of like relationship type thing. Beth is into herself, but then he talks a little bit about like the psychological like ramifications of that, right? Is Beth allowed to like herself? Is she the type of person that would allow her to like herself, right? There's a lot of questions of narcissism and things like that, and I think it is an interesting way to realistically expand the character of Beth's, right? Because Beth is now not just one person, but two versions of the same character that have different experiences and live out the duality of her personality.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting to kind of see those two versions of Beth come together and accept each other, right? And also do other things.
Yeah, there's a couple things here. I'll start with the one thought, and I'll try to remember the other one as I go down the path. The first thought being, it's a there's that whole like self-help aspect of like know yourself and love yourself, um, and and approve of yourself, right? It's essentially Beth when they're in space, they're talking to each other and they're saying you have a nice ass, right? like like in a weird sense, that is a self affirmation, right?
Right.
It's personifying the self affirmation. So that's not a narcissistic thing. Like it is okay to recognize your strengths. It's okay to recognize your weaknesses, because we all have them. It doesn't. You shouldn't put yourself down for these things. You just realize that that's who you are. So that's the first thing. And the second thing, and I did remember what it was, is uh, they are clones. One is a clone, whatever. At some point in time, it's nature versus nurture. They were cloned. They started at the same baseline. One went up to space, continued to have adventures out there, has a space apartment, has all this stuff, and then the other stayed on Earth and has her experiences here. So although they are the same person genetically, personality wise, they've had time to diverge in certain ways.
Sure.
So they're not necessarily the same person. And maybe that's where I'm like, on from an infidelity standpoint, before we get to the end of the episode, that is where it's like, well, she is cheating because she's cheating with a different person. Different experiences, different perspectives.
Yeah. And I think there's another question in there when you talk about them being different people, but starting from that same baseline, I think it's taking that same baseline and then emphasizing one of those two aspects, right? Like the clone that stays home is content in being with Jerry, being with the family, but there's that nagging like thought in the back of the mind, right? Like, well, what would it be like to go out on those events? Like, they are resolved to, like, they are at home and they're happy with Jerry, and then with Space Beth, yeah, she's out having these adventures, taking on Grumflemites, doing all these things, but you have like clues like that framed photo of the Smith family in her spaceship where she's still holding on to a part of her life back home and her life with the family, right? There's still a part of her that wants some of that. And so perhaps that's what leads to the attraction to each other, right? Is each one represents that other part of them that they are not, but now they get to, I don't know, do things with them. So
yeah. Well, so we have here, they talk about inside the episode. We have it here as well. Looking at Space Beth as a younger Rick, there's that aspect of Rick where he wants to do space stuff. He wants to do Unity and just be like destructive and self-destructive, doing all this stuff. But there's also a part of him that also cares about his family, cares about this new family that he has. And what we see in Space Beth is the actuality of like that same thing where Beth wants to be free, but she also wants that family. I think there's a really cool scene where they're doing the snow angels on the roof and they're smoking the vape, whatever.
Yeah.
And Space Beth blows a little middle finger as Beth is talking about family. And when Space Beth is talking, domestic Beth blows a image of Jerry.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting as well. Kind of another just almost subconscious difference in their focus and what their motivations are.
Yeah, yeah. So talking about that, of course, things happen. Eventually, Space Beth spills the beans, so to speak, crushing Jerry. Jerry going and turning into the pill bug protocol, and then eventually coming out of it, taking control, being assertive, and then them becoming a thruple, as Scott Martyr mentions. What do you think about how that progressed and how that evolved? Is that, what? Tell me about it.
I feel a certain way about it, and I don't know if I've been able to contextualize it into words,
Hmm.
but it is a very interesting scene in how Jerry inserts himself into that into that dynamic, right? And um really stands up for his marriage with like domestic Beth, but also is open to her feelings and her feelings for Space Beth, and then Space Beth wanting to sort of uh, dominate, right, with Jerry, and him somehow playing that role at the same time, right? And
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it creates this weird dynamic between the three of them that I think the writers did a really great job of. Yes, it's really uncomfortable and like kind of like
yeah,
I most relate to Summer and Morty in the scenario, right? But the the writers kind of created this scenario where there are two Beths. Space Beth did not just like show up once and then is out of the picture, but she has become part of this family unit, even if it's only for certain periods of time.
yeah.
And the fact that Beth and Jerry, much like we learned with the Nimbus episode, right, and their willingness to be more open
Mhm.
physically, um, this is maybe the next evolution of that, and now it's something that I don't anticipate there being a lot of like hot and heavy scenes of the three
Yeah,
of them
yeah,
moving forward, but this episode does establish a new dynamic between the three of them
yeah.
that is somehow healthy for them, I guess. And maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, maybe it'll create some other problems further down the road. But yeah, the
Yeah.
writers took a risk, and based on the feedback that I saw on Reddit in the last 24 hours, people really seemed to like the episode. They thought it was funny. They thought it was interesting. There was a part of me that was really worried, especially in those early comments that I saw from you, that we were going to get a lot of backlash, like the incest baby episode and things like that, right? Where like people are gonna be like, oh, this is too much, or this is too out of bounds, and really people have not reacted that way overall.
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. Yeah. Talk about the writers in that scene. Really solid job of Space Beth being dominating, domestic Beth being more. I'll say more submissive, for lack of a better dictionary or
Sure.
thesaurus at my stead, um, and Jerry like working both sides of that, uh, getting back to the picture on Space Beth's apartment of the family. Like there was obviously an attraction there at some point in her life, her clone's life, whatever life, and like he's like that's Jerry. That's Jerry. I don't know. He knows how to work both sides of it, um, and get to a place, I think, that there's a certain level of confidence there to be like, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, I'm gonna go cry at Starbucks to
I'm
get on their
gonna
Wi-Fi.
kill myself.
I'm gonna get a job at Starbucks, or whatever. Like he's like,
Yeah,
this is what it is. I'm gonna pack all of my same shirts into a bag and whatever. I'm out of here.
that's one of my favorite bits of the whole thing. So this is an awkward and unsettling situation, especially for the Smith children. Which, I mean, who hasn't been in a scenario where your parental figure and their interstellar clone find themselves in a romantic relationship and you're left to deal with it, right? Maybe it played out for you in other ways, but in this situation, we find another major theme of this episode, which is, of course, avoidance. And the way that is played out very, very well is by turning to video games, like many of us do when we want to avoid our problems. We just turn to video games. So yeah, there's a line from Summer as she right after she discovers that the Beths are into each other, talking about her mental flexibility being stronger than stubbornness. Right? She was anti video games until she needed them. I don't know. Did you have any thoughts about that turn that she took and her escapism into gaming?
I think that's. I honestly think that is such a great line, and I wish I had that line for my speech on Friday, because like there's to be stubborn, to be like just a brick wall in the face of adversity or change or anything, like that's okay, like you're stonewalling stuff. A mentor of mine a ways back said, change is like waves on the beach, right? You can either stand up to the wave and get your ass beat by the pounding shoreline, or you could just go with the wave, right? Like go under it, go around it, go with it. And so in my mind, this kind of like emotional intelligence, all that type of stuff, mental flexibility is much harder to do, to like rationalize, understand who you like, where you're coming from, why you're thinking about certain things. Even if like you're thinking negative about yourself, right? Like I went to a counselor, last year sometime, because I was super stressed out, had a lot of anxiety, and I went in there, and they gave me different ways of looking at things to, like, okay, instead of saying I can't do this, say I will be able to do this eventually, or just as a small example. It is tougher to be mentally flexible, and that's why it's stronger than just being like, nope, not gonna do it.
But at the same time, this is a scenario where Summer's having a hard time mentally processing what's going on with her parents.
Mm-hmm.
And so instead of being flexible with that situation, she's like, I'm going to go play video games, which brings us to the line, some of us need all the control we can get, right? Like,
yeah,
that is a situation I think I have been in the scenario before, where I'm like, so much crap is going on and I can't control any of it. But you know what I can control? My automatic wheat farm in Minecraft. Or like, or playing this Satisfactory game and making sure my factory's ready to go. So, yeah, I think there are things in this episode that speak to gaming culture and why people play games, why people gravitate toward games, and I think that need for control, or having something that you can control, is certainly one of those things.
I mean, you said something very, very astute there, which is why people play video games. They play video games to escape from the realities of real life.
Yeah.
And yet, in this episode, they're turning the realism up on their video game to escape real life.
Yes.
Which is such a, thinking about it, like, that's really a very, very cool thing. Other examples of avoidance, like the video games aren't the only examples here, right? Sure. I already mentioned the pill bug protocol. Space Beth saying he'd rather turn into a bug than have a conversation. The Beths wanting to, instead of dealing with the family shit, they want Rick to mind blow them.
Yeah.
And then finalizing it the Thanksgiving dinner scene with just Rick, Morty, and Summer, where they are trying to avoid what is obviously they're all noticing. Going back to that conversation between Summer and Morty, they're trying not to notice, but they can't help but notice. But they're trying, but it's there.
Yeah.
And eventually, they break down sobbing. That is, I mean, that is a very, very good way of looking at avoidance. Eventually, you're going to have to deal with it.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of when you do
It,
and
it
how
doesn't
you
it doesn't make it easier running away from it necessarily. Like it will catch up to you, and certain problems can get worse the longer you avoid them. So
do it. Yeah.
yeah, they I don't know, like for a smarts and farts show, as Scott Martyr likes to call it. They have a lot of smarts in here about talking about these big issues and ways that people do avoid their problems and try to find a way to escape what's going on in their homes, right, and things like
Yeah.
that. Even Rick at the very beginning, finding out that that Space Best was there, he's like, "All right, Morty, let's leave. Like, let's get out of here." Like, he tries to avoid the whole episode right at the beginning.
Yeah. Well, and he bookends the episode with avoiding the other problem. So their Space Beth leaves, she gets on the ship, she's out, and Jerry says, "We all learned a lesson." And Rick says, "We sure did." And then he takes a swig out of his flask. And then the next scene is him going into the kitchen, taking the Venusian wine, opening up a hidden compartment with a Meeseeks box, a bottle that looks like it has a mini Morty in it, and a bunch of his flasks, a handful of his own flasks.
Yeah.
He puts a wine in there. He shuts it off with a controller and then uses the garbage disposal to destroy the controller.
Which, can we just say, is probably awful for your disposal. That can't be good. He
No, it
doesn't even
sharpens
run
the
water.
blades. Sharpens
Oh.
the blade.
Okay, sure. All right.
That's why you put eggshells down there too. Eggshells and remote controls. But yeah, like I want to bring that up just real quick because that was a conversation that folks had in the discussion post, which is like what do you think is implied by him doing that? Is it him putting the wine in there, the other things within the cabinet?
My thought is that he's just, I mean, really, if you look at the episode, sort of the start of the Beths coming together was them sharing that wine, which then led to their conversation, which led to like the language implant, and then just that was the first in a ripple effect of them, doing things. And so I think that was him just trying to be like, all right, I'm going to try and prevent that from happening again by locking this up and throwing away the key. That's to me is what I read that as. Yes, there were other things in there. I speculate that maybe having a Meeseeks box in there, even though there's evidence throughout the show that that's not the only Meeseeks box in existence, is the one that Rick had. But maybe that's a way of them being like, no more Meeseeks, because the box is in that thing, that hidden compartment, and it's been destroyed, right? Like, or it's just an easily recognizable piece of in-show lore where you can be like, oh, that's a spot where he hit a Meeseeks box, and avid viewers will recognize the Meeseeks box from season 1, episode 5, or whatever.
Maybe if there was a plumbus in there, that would have been that would spur speculation.
Sure.
Really, I read it the same as you as far as the Venusian wine being up there. I mean, like, let's try to avoid this from happening ever in the future. But it's interesting. The flasks up there is interesting to me. I'm not speculating that we're going to have a necessarily story arc where he is trying to curb his alcoholism, but there you could dig down and say there is a part of it where he's avoiding the subject of his alcoholism.
I find it interesting that when Rick is talking about his history with forgetting the ice cream, so to speak.
Oh yeah.
That Beth starts to almost pry for details, and he says, "I need to be way more drunk to, or drunker than I am, or whatever." It's some sort of line that alludes to not that he needs to be drunk, because he is not currently drunk. like Rick may maintain a consistent state of inebriation at all times, but he just needs to be far more so in order to go down the road of those stories. So
His inhibition is like he's at this level of alcohol, being drunk, but the inhibition doesn't go away until this level of being drunk, right?
well, as he said in the season premiere, he used to drink. So yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh man, look at all these references. All right, so yes, avoidance. So we talked about that. There were a lot of video games in here. This is the question here is, we kind of there was a couple different trailers previews for this episode going into Sunday, and they all kind of were centered around, with the exception of the speech that Jerry gave, the different video games that they're playing on this I forget what the system is called, but the most realistic video game system, the X-Pod XL or whatever. So the question is this the interdimensional cable style anthology episode for the season? I mean, if we're comparing Rick's minutes to this, how well does it fit that anthology format?
I think an argument could be made that this meets the intent, so to speak, right? Like we talked about it with season 5, where you'd get a one-off commercial for like Nintendo 69 or something like that, where that felt like an interdimensional cable sort of bit. I would argue that the setups with these video games were not as out of left field. They didn't have the same, improvisational feel, so to speak, as the interdimensional cable episodes do at times. But in terms of like anthology type stuff, it did take a backseat to the main A plot, right? Like, so if they want to say yes, that was our interdimensional cable type thing for the season, they definitely threw some hits out there. There were some great, one-off ideas of in terms of video gaming. But I think if this is the anthology, interdimensional cable episode for the season, it's not going to necessarily be in the top 2 or even 3 of the other offerings that we've had in the past.
I want to mention something real quick. As far as Rick minutes, so in the Rick minutes episode, the A plot and the B plot. The A plot was essentially the Jerry and Beth looking at their alternate versions, looking at different selves, and then also, Summer getting me like, we're just gonna play Yahtzee and like it's so boring, and she's gonna go sell turquoise.
Yeah,
and then Morty eventually going up to her and saying, "Nobody exists on purpose. Nobody belongs anywhere. Everybody's gonna die. Come watch TV," which is a very kind of it's a similar avoidance thing, right?
Sure.
Whereas interdimensional cable, kind of avoidance, like let's just go watch TV. Let's ignore all this existential shit. Let's ignore it. And then here we are now 6 seasons later saying, let's go play video games. And why is that bad to deal with our problems? So I think there's an interesting parallel there to have those two episodes right next to each other.
Yeah, I think while whether it's A or B plot of Interdimensional Cable 2, where you have Jerry in that hospital, and he's that whole plot of him having to give up his penis to save another alien guy or whatever. That's a funny through line and stuff. But I feel like in that episode, the driver there is the interdimensional cable, right? Like the Jerry plot is almost there just to break up the other scenes that they came up with, and not just have scene after scene after scene for 22 minutes. this, that's not the impression I get with this episode, right? Like they weren't like, let's set out to make a bunch of funny gaming ideas, and then like if you watch the inside of the episode, they like barely talk about the video games, right?
Yeah.
Like that's not what's driving this episode. So I don't know. We'll see if any other contenders come up in season 6 for the interdimensional cable of this season. Who knows? Maybe we'll get it next week. There's no telling.
There is no telling,
yeah.
unless
But
somebody does tell us. In which case, we'll take that. We'll keep it to ourselves. We'll sign an NDA. It doesn't matter. We will do that. Just let us know.
Let's talk very briefly about these video games that we got in the episode. Obviously, the simulation space type video game where they really up the realism. And in doing so, sort of make the game less fun, right? Like there's less asteroids because that's more realistic. He has to like record a video message to his son because he probably won't be back before the sun dies or something like that.
He'll probably starve to death in space looking for an asteroid to shoot.
That's right.
Yo, tell your son you love him. I will, bro. Yeah,
bro. Yeah. No, I will.
The fighting games get into a street fight with where upping the realism, they actually have to get to the fight to do that, and they got to take a subway, take the red line maybe. I loved, I mean that premise. It was in the trailers. I love the extra little bit of the modes that they had. They chose 2-player mode, but there was also a battle royale. There's a meth mode. There's a pants free mode. I don't know what that is. Urban mode, and then slappers only. So, assuming that is, like instead of like Belanca clawing at that, there's like like high school or junior high school fights. Like I saw a lot of fights where like they're slapping each other. Like no, throw some punches, you know?
Yeah. You probably forget why you even wanted to fight in a lot of those rounds. So, there's a really quick scene that looks like a Final Fantasy game, but Cloud is having a hard time trying to lift the Buster Sword, which I think is really funny. And then the text-based gaming. You got to be real old. You got to be like me and Brandon's age to appreciate the history of text-based gaming. What did you think? What do you think about clearings equals vampires?
Though that I laughed so hard that of my favorite bits, I'll just throw this out there early on. The text-based gaming is my favorite bits because I was cracking up about all the text-based. I played a lot of those things back in the day. I just loved being able to like type and be like, go north. Oh, you see, there's one on America Online where it's like a space-based one. You do trading, you get your ship, you buy new ships, you do some whatever, do some smuggling. And it was all just text-based. Even like some games now, like where there's lots of text, like some of the Shadowrun games or what have you. Like I love those. And so I also played this like one at like a Comic-Con where like you just sit around a table and it mimics the computer inputs and you do this. So when they were doing the realistic text-based games, and it was like, you're in a forest. All right, climb up the tree. You climb up the tree, you see more forest. Go north. You go north. It takes you a half an hour. It's getting dark.
Your mom's stuck at the airport.
Like, and then finally getting, they get to the clearing, the vampires win, and just Morty being like, "It's a vamp. What the heck? Like, I'm operating off the same information you are."
Yeah.
Perfect.
That line is perfect because when you're playing those games, you're just like, what am I supposed to do? What is a right answer? What is a wrong answer? Is that a good thing that happened to me? I didn't lose any health. I guess I'm fine. So yeah, that's a good depiction of the history of text-based gaming.
Your mother will be in the shadows soon.
The infinite menu, right? Like this offers up an opportunity for, if that console stays at the house, for them to continue to dish out additional game types, game modes. They're not limited anymore in the series to just flipping through channels of interdimensional cable. They could also have, someone playing a game and it just be completely random too. So yeah, I think that'll be interesting. Speaking of our favorite bits, right? A lot of those were from the video games, but let's roll through the rest of our favorite bits from this episode. Starting off with Morty referring to Rick as a turkey Dracula after he slams into the sliding glass window and then immediately just transforms into a naked Rick. Obviously alluding to the fact that he got them yet another federal pardon from a president that Thanksgiving.
I love that Rick and the president had made amends, but he's still doing the turkey pardon stuff. When Summer goes in is making fun of the game, like, you guys are just trying to convince yourself this is cool because you feel lame about it. Summer, you know nothing about gamer culture.
Even though she perfectly defines an aspect of gamer culture where people try their hardest to be like, no, this is cool. This is a cool game. When the games aren't always cool. They're not always even very good.
They're not. But try Inscription. It's a very great game. Morty, you pointed this out. Morty and Jerry both shouting vanilla for their flavor request.
I love vanilla.
I love vanilla. It's not my favorite.
Vanilla it gets a lot of flack, but it is a complex flavor. Vanilla bean.
You have the bean. Oh yeah, there you go. There you
go.
I'm a rainbow sherbet with mint and chip kind of guy. If I'm leaving it like a banana royale from 31 flavors, get a mint and chip, two scoops of rainbow sherbet, one of mint and chip, all the toppings. Oh, so good.
Sounds like a mess.
Oh,
I'm like a bougie ice cream connoisseur now, and so I go only to the local farm to cone type hipster ice cream places, so I can get a mini flight of 6 flavors of curated ice cream. It's so good.
And whenever you tell your family that you're going out for ice cream, and you come back and you say, I forgot the ice cream, kids.
Yeah.
It's officially code for doing it with yourself.
Yeah. That's forgetting the ice cream is now officially code for that. So if never forget the ice cream unless you want to answer for it. There's a moment when Beth is explaining to Rick that she is in a relationship with herself. And Rick uses the line, as the kids say, you do you. Has different meaning when she is literally doing herself. So yeah. You do you, Beth.
I really like the Black Mirror shout out to San Junipero from where they grow old together in a simulation that entire time. Rick going in there like, what, you did a full San Junipero? Solid. Black Mirror.
That was a missed reference for me. I had to hear about it on Reddit later.
Okay. I think there's the post credit with Jerry going to the Jerry Brewery to just do a single kiss with somebody and then walking away. Somebody compared that to the episode with Anthony Mackie, Striking Vipers, which involves video games, where 2 guys are friends and they're college buddies, and they start playing a really lifelike kind of VR video game. 2 men, but in the game they can feel all the characters and stuff like that. One's playing as a woman, one's playing as a man, and then they start to have a relationship within the game. Anyways, so then those 2 characters in real life, they're like, is this something that we have outside of this world? And so man to man they kiss, and they're like, nah, nope.
Nope.
Only within the game. So some folks referenced they thought maybe that was a reference to Striking Vipers, and then after credits, I thought that was cool.
Yeah, there's the line as they're eating the ice cream, and Jerry, the kids are just wolfing down the ice cream again, escapism. as a running theme. And Jerry says, "Hey, stop eating it so fast. Thanks, your moms went and got this. Thank them for doing it." And and Morty has to say, "Thanks for doing it, moms."
uh,
Yeah.
so when Jerry finds out that Space Beth had sex with Domestic Beth, it does flashback to his high school. He's got his acne. There's a little sign on the locker. It's just a small thing that I love it. Prom it like it's hot.
Yep. Yeah, there's a couple of like 90s type references in the background there that the what do you call it? The landscape artist? I don't know. The background artist.
Sure.
They had a lot of fun with. They did a good job on those ones.
Prom it like it's hot.
Prom it
You know,
like it's hot.
I like saying something like it's hot. Doesn't matter what it is. I just like saying something like it's hot, and then filling in the blank like an Mad Libs.
Yeah, there you go. There's been a lot of chatter on the subreddit lately about how old Morty and all the other characters are. Are they even aging at all? Is this going to be a Simpsons type show where the characters never age, even though they go through all these different, holidays and things like that? And there's a great line in here where Morty says, "How old are we? We've had 1,000,000 Thanksgivings." So a little bit of like meta commentary there on the questions about how old the characters actually are.
Yep. Jerry's pill bug protocol, of course, was what he wanted most. Rick just wanted tattoos, and then shows his lower back where it's him and Jerry as eagles on either side of the butt crack.
That's a good one. You mentioned it earlier, Jerry packing up his closet full of the same shirt, and then also having more of the same shirt like somewhere else in the room too. I just thought that was a great like nod to animation and the idea that characters are always wearing the same clothes. I thought that was really funny.
This one line, I don't know why it tickled me so, but when Jerry is calling them out, basically being like, fuck you. He's like, go get married by a robot and finger yourselves on the moon. Just that little snippet.
Jerryisms.
Good job, Jerry.
Some of the best and worst parts of the episode, you can decide for yourself if we're talking about a best part or worst. We'll probably tell you. For me, the best part, and probably the moment that made me laugh out loud the hardest, was when they are sitting at the table, Morty with a salt shaker, Summer, spreading the butter, and just that blank stare on their faces as they try to avoid hearing what's going on, and then ultimately talking about what they're thankful for. Those things, of course, being water and the Discovery Channel. So, yeah, that I was dying during that scene.
The way they repeat the hard cuts of Summer and Morty finding out their moms, it shows a front view of Summer's face, front view of Morty's face separate times, and then it cuts to them that same face but in front of the TV versus finding out about their moms doing it.
Yeah, just as like a stylistic note, right? Like the way that they did that, just kind of like showing that immediate, like, oh gosh, I just caught my parents doing something that I don't want to be thinking about, to an immediate cut with their face in the same like spot on the screen, to boom, playing video games. Like, let me go escape this right now. Yeah, I just thought it was great.
After all things were said and done, Morty, Space Beth is like, maybe I'll see my grandson up there. And Morty goes, what? Like, oh, Naruto. Okay. Just kind of emphasizing the question of incest, self-cest, masturbation. What is it? I don't know. Let's bring up Naruto since we're on the subject.
Just as the icing on the cake, let's make sure you don't forget about the time that we made an incest baby for Summer and Morty and sent them out into space.
But I do like that they called it back, and here's why. This will be I think the last thing I want to say about the episode is going back to how we started this with you quoting me when I was writing those things to you, and me saying, having watched it, finishing it up, thinking about it more, this is such a stark contrast to that episode because you can go back to the sperm episode and you can try to extract themes from it, and I'm sure they're there. I won't argue that there's not something there, but this is it's a mature way of looking at the subject. Like
Sure.
whereas and you can go back to the episode where we talked about this. The sperm episode was something I thought of probably when I was 13, 14, 15, 16 in high school, and just like, yeah, you know what would be funny? No, I made that joke. I actually made the joke about just like, what happens if there was a giant sperm who was my pet? I made that as a kid, and so it felt like a kid wrote that. This doesn't feel like that. This feels like something a 40-year-old man who just retired knows. Like, there's something to think about there. So, anyways,
and the fact that we were able to have a discussion about a lot of those concepts and thoughts in this podcast, and not have to feel like, oh, okay, we're just gonna be talking about the episode where the Beths do it. Like there's a lot more context and substance, I think, to draw from in this episode, which I think helps it with that maturity factor as well. So
there are a couple comments out over on the Twitch. Yo Siamern, that's probably not how I should say it. But anyway, talking about the look on Summer and Morty's face when they see their moms making out, that makes the whole thing gross. Yeah, that like just like when my kid like sees me like dancing with my wife, and he's like, "Oh, whoa, cringy, ooh, I shouldn't see that." Peace Among Ricks saying "Yay therapy" when I brought up the therapy earlier. Quick the Ewok, more realism. Space is pretty empty. That is very, very, very true. And then Julie 888 thought it was funny that Jerry thought the Beths only talked about his weird and small penis.
You're the only one bringing that up, Jerry. Yeah. Well, along with our lovely Twitch folks that are following along with the show live, we have some additional listener suggestions and short outs to cover. First up, we got an email this week from Michael Ross, and I won't read the whole email, but first off, he talks about enjoying the podcast. Thank you so much for that. But looking back at interdimensional cable and looking back at that concept of the B plot, if you will, or the A plot, where they have those goggles where they can see into other versions of reality. He speculates that there may be they could have been used to sort of find Evil Morty somewhere, or maybe even Evil Morty was using that sort of technology to spy on Rick C-137. But now he brings up that maybe those types of goggles could be used by our Rick to find Rick Prime. It's very possible. I mean, I think that's something they could use. I think it's really interesting that the show is talking about interdimensional travel, is talking about portal technology and the fact that it's broken in like every episode, but is also adamantly like not doing anything about it right now. Like they're taking a stand. They're reminding the viewers, yes, portal technology exists in the show, but it's not happening right now. And Rick is capable of fixing it.
The more you talk about it, the less I want to do it.
Exactly. So I think it's really interesting, but very cool theory. And thank you for the email, Michael. We appreciate that. A couple other short outs over on YouTube. SkyBlue81, thank you for subscribing. And those over on Twitch, Yo Cern, and Gamer Established 1974, thank you for following over on Twitch. You guys are awesome. Also, have a good day, Face. Thank you for coming in and immediately blowing up the chat as soon as you got here. Thank you for being here as well. Yeah, any other short outs you want to cover, Brandon?
We do. We have a brand new review. This one it's a 3-star review, which is good, right? It's two is below average, 1 way below average, 3 is average, 4 is above average, and 5 is phenomenal. This is a 3-star review, and here it goes. It's called Dive In, which is good. It's just good. It's a good thing. Or maybe they're saying dive in because of the content of the review. It is by Z_Mac. Good insight, but it took 24 minutes to start talking about the actual episode. That is correct. That is 100% correct. Because
no argument from us.
Because we do. And so I think that's the thing about our show is that because we have the semi-pertinent news stuff, we do banter a lot when it comes to all the extra stuff that is associated with the show. We do like talking about the episodes. Of course, we like talking about the episodes. That's why we do this show. We've gotten into the habit over the course of our the show since 2017 to also talk about all the related news that has to do with Rick and Morty, because we want to. Not everybody is all up on every single thing Rick and Morty related.
Yeah, and I think especially because this podcast does not necessarily stop when the seasons stop, right? We still revisit other aspects of the show, and so that semi-pertinent news is something that sometimes can carry an episode realistically in the months between new Rick and Morty content.
But to be fair, I think that sometimes we do get into the habit of just expanding that semi-pertinent news further out than we should all the time. Sure. And so I think that's a fair bit of feedback, Z-Mac, on that, especially when it is a new season. There's lots to talk about in new episodes, and we don't necessarily want to wait 25 minutes into an episode to get after it. So we hear you. We understand you. We don't disagree with you. And we thank you for taking the time to listen to us.
And may I direct you over to youtube.com/apatheticenthusiasm, where a great person and by the name of Grey Knight has a tendency to go into our YouTube videos and leave a comment with a link to the start of the main thing. So if the main thing is your thing and you're not here for the semi-perts, check out the YouTube comments, and maybe Grey Knight's got you hooked up with a way to skip ahead. So
I would love if I had a little bit of extra time to actually do the timestamp and do that for you. I'm hard pressed lately. So if I can find some time, I will do that, and I'll put them in the show notes. But I will not promise.
No,
I will not promise.
We could just take notes during the show.
I could, but
whatever. Anyway, thank you so much for your review. Thanks to everybody for the comments, as well as the likes, subscribes, follows, and all the other things across all of the different platforms where you can find this show. We appreciate your input. We appreciate the live chat, which is why we're going to stick around for our Twitch-only post show, where we'll chat with everybody here on the Twitch. If you want to be part of that, make sure that you're tuned in Monday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern. Otherwise, until next week, and after we have another episode of Rick and Morty, I'm Travis.
And I'm Brandon. And thank you, one and all, for listening and being a part of this fandom with us.
Bye.
Goodbye. I'm going to not mark the time. I'm cutting that. I'm cutting that from the actual episode. I don't want to make people mad, you know?
It's going to be on YouTube.
No!